What's up guys, ZiSotto here, and today we're looking at the patch notes for patch 4.18, Journey to Asgard. We, as always, look at the skins first, and then look at the balance changes primarily. We have 4 new skins this patch: Beliak Ymir, Inugami Fenrir, Sequind Sadist Daji, and Harbinger Nike. We'll look at those real quick here. The Beliak Ymir is mostly focused around the candy and ice cream theme. Has got like ice cream sandwiches as a wall and stuff like that. Looks pretty cool. We have the, well, Fenrir. Very Japanese, I guess. Then the Daji skin, as well as the Nike skin, which was unfortunately not actually shown on the patch notes, so we don't really know what it's going to look like in game. We will quickly click on the voice packs here. Little disclaimer, this may be very loud, so if you're using your headphones, turn down your speakers. Or your headphones, rather.
I look like big ice cream, but I am actually big softy. Your attempts to subdue me will have considerable repercussions.
And the other 2 skins, I think, do not have voice lines. I'm expecting the Harbinger Nike would have some. I'm not quite sure if it's a tier 2 or not, but, well. We also get some sale for the Beliak Ymir and Inugami Fenrir right at the start of the Odyssey here, so they're going to be the new Odyssey skins, and the bonus item will be the Daji skin, which is considered a tier 2, interestingly enough, which has caused a little bit of upset because a lot of people were hoping for a, well, special voice pack for this one, because it has been teased for quite a while and it would have been fitting. And there's some quests along with that as well, the 7 Norse quests and Conqueror achievement, and that can get you the Norse loading screen. Then there are achievements for Hachiman. These were actually rather hard to achieve. Mounted archery, he needs you to hit 5 enemy guards with your ultimate, and you need to stun 2 enemies with your Jitsu in order to get the other achievement. And that brings us to Project Olympus. There's some more fixes to Smite in general. Spectator gets a change in regards to the health bars. I think making them a little bit brighter. So they will be a little bit better to see, a little lighter, and making it more colorblind friendly. So that's a little bit beneficial for the viewing experience, especially for the SPL. And server rollups are no longer active on any region. This is especially a relief to those playing on the Asian servers, as well as the Oceanic servers. You will be playing on your servers now because of multi-queue. Harris thinks it's not really necessary anymore, which is nice. And random player loadouts, which is kind of fun. Just being able to get, for example, a different loading, not a loading frame, sorry, not a loading avatar, but pretty much everything else. You can not only randomize the wards, but pretty much all other cosmetics, which is, you know, for example, HUD themes, announcer packs, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a lot of fixes, actually. Fix an issue where players could not enable random wards. Well, that's going in line with what we have in terms of randomizing in general. And the more important parts here are blocked players can no longer message the player again, and people on D&D cannot be messaged, and players on a blocked list can no longer join a custom room hosted by the blocker. Then there's a glitch with Grandmasters where they would always get a -2 TP penalty, which is no longer the case, and you can get your Triumphant chest now. So, quite a few fixes in that regard. Then there is a change to the description of medalists, making it a little bit easier to explain, a little bit more understandable basically. Same for one of Asclepius. And then there is an updated description for each evolving item, to be consistent with other evolving items. I'm not quite sure what that means in the context or how it's different from the first one in regards to the description, but well. And then we have bug fixes, and we have a lot of them. So some minor ones, effects for AMC, but also some larger ones, like Arpush's hitbox. Some guards, after Ajax made that post, turned out to have a larger hitbox, or larger hitbox on their basic attacks, rather, hitting an enemy easier than they were intended to. Basically, you know, if you're a little too far away from the projectile, a little far to the side, you would still get hit. And that's changed, and that's, you know, at least for some guards, decently relevant. Though this does not affect ADC, so it's not anything absolutely crazy. Chuck gets fixes for Storm Tech sound effects, which were silent beforehand. Chronos is, I think, one of the biggest deals here. Chronos basic attacks had a larger hitbox than intended, which is maybe part of the reason why Chronos basic attacks feel somewhat easier to hit than others, and that is no longer the case. So you now actually have to hit them like every other ADC, basically. That's pretty huge in my opinion. And then Fenrir has just a description fix. Hachiman has a visual fix for Shogun Hachiman. And interesting enough, adjusted Hachiman's basic attacks and ultimate shot to better look like they are fired from his bow. I'm not sure if this changes his projectile range as well. Depending on where the starting point of the projectile is, that can affect the range a tiny bit. So could be a bit of a buff, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a visual thing. Hades gets the same treatment with the hitbox of its basic attacks being too large. Kind of nice it was kind of nice to have that larger hitbox for Hades because of the blight application, so a little bit of impact there. Then again, Hades is not that popular at the moment. Isis has that description update that she has a bigger basic attack in her chain, but nothing changed about that, just a description. Nox gets a visual effects fix. Raijin gets a description addition that he has intentionally larger basic attacks as well, so no change there again. Fix for arms with voice lines. Ratatoskr gets just another visual fix for his Flurry. Sobek gets another visual fix. Sylvanos gets an added part to the description that his basic attacks are AoE, nothing new there. And Zeus, once again, gets a bit of a nerf in that regard, where basic attacks were too large. And for Zeus, I think this is also decently impactful because he can stack his passive with the basic attacks, so making them harder to hit means passively harder to stack. And that brings us to the actual balance changes. And we begin with Ankile, apparently. Apparently, we've been saying it wrong all along. I'll probably keep saying Ankile because I'll forget it until tomorrow. This item is, well, very, very niche, basically only built against our Kwang. Not very valued, and that's because the stats just don't compete. Other items just give you so much more damage, while also giving you decent amounts of stats in other regards. That's not the case for Ankile. And with this patch, it kind of becomes more of a counterpart to Shifter's Shield. Shifter's Shield no longer has the magical protections. Now, this item will have 40 physical power instead of 25, and 60 magical protection being reduced down to 50. So you have 10 less magical protection. Not that big of a deal. It's obviously a bit of a hit, but 10 is acceptable. 15 power, on the other hand, especially early on, is quite relevant, meaning this item has 40 power, it has 10% cooldown reduction, it has that silencing passive still, and is at 50 magical protection. I can imagine this being picked up more for the first time in a long time. I think, especially for close-range guardians, this can also be quite gross to deal with. Some guardians that look to engage on you with that one ability, and if you manage to silence them after that, it could be quite good. Thinking, for example, like Capri Plaque or something like that. So I think this can have more uses. I don't think will necessarily become that core yet, because it's very cheap. It's very cheap with the 40 power for 2,000 golds. It's not bad, but it doesn't have any pen, and pen items usually provide you a little more early game. But I do think there should be use cases for it now, basically. Atalanta's bow gets 5% attack speed. Who cares? It's just no, this is not making this item any more relevant. I'm sorry, but just no. I mean, maybe with the Kaival dropping down eventually something, but 5%, I highly doubt. Highly doubt they'll do something. Chronos Pendant, decreased price from 2,900 to 2,750. I think it was Pretty Prime who said this on Twitter. It's a nice change. It's nice that it gets that, but for most mages, for damaging mages, Spirit Isolation will just be better in almost any situation still. So not much of a justification to pick it up yet, with some exceptions like, for example, a support style Hell. I would say that what Pretty Prime said about this is very true. This item just needs a little more of a price decrease. Then it can be compete with the other items in the, well, mid-price range for mages, and then it will become more impactful. I might be wrong here, somebody might figure out a strategy to implement this, but as it stands, it will still be a very, very late game situational choice because of the price. Witchblade becomes a very different item through this patch. removed 15% lifesteal and added 10% cooldown reduction. So completely different functionality. I actually had to look up the stats here. So it has 100 health, it has 10% cooldown reduction, it has 20% attack speed and 10% movement speed. And obviously the attack speed reduction by 20%. This is interesting because it kind of opens up some slots for, say, supports to pick it up with cooldown reduction and health. Certain mages maybe, but it's also weird because now this item has 10% cooldown reduction and 20% attack speed. And that basically means that there's a very limited amount of gods that make very effective use out of it, because these two stats, well, they don't link all too well. Most basic attack gods don't really need CDR, most CDR gods don't really need attack speed. Can be maybe a situational late game choice, maybe to boost your DPS at the same time as getting some utility. But then again, how impactful will the attack speed direction be late game? It could be a choice for gods that really make use of both. Think, for example, Erlang Shen, who can definitely make at least a decent amount of use of both stats. So it's interesting where this will end up and who will make use of it. I think it will be more beneficial than it was with the lifesteal, for sure. And that brings us to the god balance changes. Artio gets some nerfs. Well, no surprise there. Decompose, decreased protection debuff from 3% to 2%. Life tap, increased cooldown from 15 to 17 seconds. And heavy charge as well, as far as I understand it. So, yes. What does that tell us? Does that bring Artio down? Probably not, to be honest. I think these are good changes. These are good approaches. The protection shred was a bit ridiculous. And being able to escape a little less often and her main engage tool being on a longer cooldown does affect her a little bit. And a little self-sustain goes down a little bit as well. But I do think that even after this, she will still be very, very strong. Especially the cripple. She doesn't go away. And as long as that's there for such a long duration, I don't see her being weak by any stretch. She apparently has been performing not that crazy according to statistics. Most highest employees think she's not that strong. I still believe that's down to people are playing her in support without a secondary frontline. But, well, we'll see. I doubt it will put her down much. Somebody else gets put down a fair bit though, and that's Camazotz. Screech, decreased physical power buff from 20 to 40 to 10 to 30. Little less extra power through that ability, meaning both in early game and late game it has a bit of an impact, or mid game especially. It's not a crazy amount that gets chunked off, but it's still a little bit, it's still relevant, and that's what counts. The other ability that gets hit, and that's the bigger deal here, is Vampire Bats. Initial damage decreased from 70 to 270 to 70 to 230. That means 10 less per rank, I think. And that is quite important. Vampire Bats is what you want to level first to get the most damage off in most situations. And the initial damage will be the same. So the level 1 aggression will be the same, level 2 aggression will be the same. So that's fine. But the longer the game goes, the less impactful this becomes. And in mid-game, this is already a lot weaker. This is such a heavy damage chunk. We rarely see these decreases in base values. 40 damage off your main damaging abilities is quite a lot. Base damage, obviously. So I think this will definitely hit him. And what is not hit is the ultimate. And I think that's what can kind of keep him afloat for now, that the ultimate still has a lot of utility, a lot of damage, can very easily take down mages, especially when they don't have the escape tools available. So that's still there, but taking away from his burst, when burst is really all he works around, that's like, he's not a utility god or anything by any stretch, so he needs his damage, will impact him. I think this is a warranted nerf, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how far down this puts him. It definitely puts him down a bit, and I think it might push him to a state where he's like more around mid-tier-ish, maybe, but when he's mid-tier, people will not recognize his potential anymore, because with Camazotz not having any CC and just relying on his damage, there's just better options that you can go for in that very moment that have damage and some added utility. So I do believe that however this turns out, it will hit him definitely. If his damage still remains enough to keep him at the top, that could happen, that could be a possibility, and then we would see not that drastic changes to the meta regarding him, but what I'm expecting more is that he gets hit harder, pushing warrior junglers up even more, because, you know, we needed that. Kuzonbow. Kuzonbow gets big buffs. Sumo Slam, a decreased cooldown from 16 seconds to 12 seconds at all ranks. Like 16 to 12 seconds to 12 seconds at all ranks. That means you can spam the hell out of this, and you can spam this early game. You can spam this in wave for aggressive clear and pressure on the enemy. You can spam this in team fights way more before you have maxed it out. So many applications for this, really, and it's really good now. What is that to say? It's just really good now, I think. And Warrior Grave, likewise, gets a cooldown reduction from 100 seconds to 75 seconds. That means that with 20% cooldown reduction, this will be down to 60 seconds cooldown. With 40% cooldown reduction, this will be down to 45 seconds cooldown. That means you can pretty much spam it in almost every engage. Not much of a loss there. You don't want to save it for bigger team fights or something anymore, because, you know, you might just get the kill with it. I do think that Kuzonbow is really not bad anymore. I really think Kuzonbow is a viable pick now. I think he was already pretty solid before this buff. Just mostly underrated and mostly hard to put in a spot, like hard to apply him, like, get a situation where he's actually effective. But now he's set so much setup. He might actually, I'll be careful saying this, but he might actually have some more reason to be chosen in support now as well. I don't think he's the greatest support by any stretch. I don't think that's how he plays, but I do think that there's reasons to play on there now. Still, I'd say he's a better solo, but yeah, I think Kuzonbow is probably one of the most benefiting guards from this patch. Ratatoskr, also one of those who benefits greatly. Flurry gets its physical power increased from 20% scaling to 25% scaling. That means that it's 100% scaling on full ticks. But also, the protection shred gets increased from 2 to 4 to 2 to 6. And that's quite a fair bit. That's before it was up to 16 protection shred. Now it's up to 24. So 8 extra. It's like a tier 2 item in terms of protection shred, pretty much. Or in other words, this is more protection shred or protection reduction than Void Shield now. I think, what's Void Shield 30? Might be wrong here. Might be wrong from the top of my head. But yeah, it definitely is much closer to Void Shield either way. And that's good for Ratatoskr. That's definitely giving him a push. I would not be surprised if we see Ratatoskr getting up in a decently higher ranking, a decently higher tier. Because I don't think he was that bad before. I think he was balanced with other guards just being better. The problem, once again, are the warriors. And for them, the flat reduction protection won't matter that much. But especially a bruiser Ratatoskr could now find its own niche better as well. Maybe he's the one, like, kind of replacing Camazotz in the meta. But I doubt that, because Camazotz was just a fair bit higher still in terms of performance. But he might push down, like, Camazotz might be pushed down to the spot where Ratatoskr was, and Ratatoskr in return gets up a fair bit. And then we have Scotty. Scotty getting nerfs. Not really a surprise. He's been performing very decently for a long time. Rune of Fun decreased Calder's dash damage from 100 to 150% scaling to 70 to 130% scaling of Scotty's basic attack damage. If I recall correctly, it also affects her 1 and then the dash. So definitely a decent chunk of damage down there, which, especially in early levels, means that she doesn't have the same burst as before. That could become a problem for her because she plays so much around her ability damage. You build her ability focused, and when that's not there, then what has she got left? Because she doesn't have the same escape tools and others and so on. But well, she still has her sprint, I suppose. But the permafrost radius is also decreased from 16 to 24 to 16 to 20. So you're not going to block off a massive area in a teamfight anymore. Meaning that overall, she takes some decent hits. Will definitely push her down in the meta a fair bit. Probably make her more of a niche pick. From what I'm expecting so far, at least. Terra. This one was a surprise to me. I didn't think she would get hit that hard. Terra is a strong support, higher tier performance. But I didn't see her as, like, being completely unstoppable at this point. Now she gets, well, a very drastic change. Monolith removed Root from Monolith Shatter. Monolith Shatter now slows the enemies by 30% for 1.5 seconds. Increased Monolith hit points from 3 to 5. So you can't take it down that easy anymore, but you don't have to be as concerned about it anymore either, because you're not going to get rooted. Slow is just much less impactful and easier to counter than a Root. You can counter it with Sprint, you can counter it with Witchblade, and that just takes a fair notch off Terra, and I'm surprised she's getting hit that hard. I'm not surprised she's getting hit, but I'm surprised she's getting hit that hard. Probably puts her down the meta a little bit as well. I think other Guardians will have more utility in that regard. Though I don't think she's absolute garbage, but I think quite a few players will be frustrated about this. And I'm surprised that the hit is that heavy to her, because it takes away so much from her hard CC. Now she only has 1 hard CC in her kit. That's somewhat hard to confirm, depending on, you know, how well you play her and how well the enemies play, but it's not the easiest one, at least. You can't do the setup combo as easily anymore either, so yeah, I think this is a heavy one. And then we have Thoth. Thoth, just why? So hitbox update, just showing that a little better. Evade and punish, a little bit better, showing the hitbox and everything. But the big one here is Final Judgment. Decrease scaling from 120 to 100%. Okay. Adjusted charged up damage from 25 to 100% of total damage to 40 to 100 of total damage. Updated visual effects and blah blah blah. I think this should have an impact. The first rank especially, 40% of the damage instead of 25. Now, I haven't done the full calculations regarding the scaling, but especially since the charge up damage impacts the base damage as well as the scaling, I'm pretty sure this will give him more damage if you basically just ult and release. Or ult and one charge and releases. And that's strange to me. I don't think Hyris says he's not overperforming on lower levels, he's just like high level guard, but you know, I don't think he needed this. I don't think Thoth really needed a buff. I think he was a very okay place. Very alright where he was. And I feel like this is a nerf that could potentially even get reverted. We'll see about that. Buff, sorry. And then where's my shirt? Where's my Tyr buff? Was needed shirt. Tyr is getting a buff. Tyr was recently played in the SPL by Variety, has shown that he still has potential, but overall Tyr has been lacking compared to other warriors. Not seen in the jungle, like every other warrior pretty much, not seen in solo much. So yeah. Felis decreased mana cost from 60 to 80 to 50 to 70. I think this is his second mana cost decrease already, so really allowing him to spam his abilities more in general, especially in the early game where mana is a bit more of an issue. And change stance. Decrease cooldown from 14 to 10 seconds to 12 to 10 seconds, which I think means that in early game he can spam all of his abilities more. Use the cooldown refresh on those. And that's a fair bit. Change stance is not something you would usually level first. This is something you would probably, in most situations, actually level last. And when the ability that's leveled last gets something that benefits it, and it treats it basically like a rank 3 ability from the start, that's pretty good. And I definitely see potential for that. And I think this will give Tyr some lift up in the meta. I hope it's not too much. But I'm also a little bit uncertain how well he can accommodate for the current meta. Because, you know, or even Hercules is not doing that well. It's doing better than Tyr, but not that well. And we'll see if the ability push guards basically have their way to come back. But I feel like, especially if we see more of a meta shift, then this could suddenly be very, very impactful. And that's it for these patch notes. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, tongue twisters today. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to hit that sub button and maybe the bell. It really helps me out. See you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth out.